Hello friends, it's Kristie Marcotte. In today's video, I'll be using Pretty Pink Posh's Decorative Pumpkins Stamp and Coordinating Die Set, and I'll be making 3 different cards, all focusing on the stamp set. For my first card, I'll also be using the Starburst stencil and the window frames die set. I'll start off with a piece of craft cardstock. I'm using Waffle Flower's mini Stencil Mat. I'll line up the stencil so more of the circle areas toward the bottom of the card. The ink color I'm using is Catherine Pooler's Macchiato. I'll add more ink around the circle of the starburst and get lighter as I work my way out on the rays. Once I'm finished stenciling the background, I'll add a gold watercolor splatter all over it. I selected one of the lighter gold paint colors. I'll lightly tap my paintbrush over the card panel to add this beautiful shimmery splatter. I did set that aside to let it dry. Then I'll put ATG tape on the back, add my card front onto a card base. Next, I'll add one of the window frames, and I did cut this out from some white shimmer cardstock. I'll put glue on the back and adhere it toward the bottom of the card. For a sentiment, I'll be stamping it directly onto the window frame. This is Autumn Greetings. I already have this stamp set up in my mini MISTI. I'm using the same Macchiato ink color, and I will ink up this sentiment a few times to get a nice solid impression. And since I did stamp on a shimmer cardstock, I will set that aside and let it dry. Now it's time to work on the pumpkins, and this is such a fun set. If you like to color, you can stamp just the outline and color that in, or you can do like I'll be doing and use the other layers. So after I've stamped the outline, now I'll line up the solid piece for the stem using the same Macchiato ink color. Then I'll change out the stamp and add the solid for the pumpkin. Ink color is Orange Peel from Catherine Pooler. Then I'll remove that stamp and add the decorative stamp on top. And there are 2 different decorative options for each pumpkin size. I'm using the little scattered, sort of a splatter polka dot look. For the decorative layer, I'm using a darker orange ink. This is Mandarin Spice by Catherine Pooler. Once I have it all stamped, I'll use the coordinating die to cut out the pumpkin. And off screen, I stamped out 5 more pumpkins, all using the same ink colors. Now one at a time, I'll add all of the pumpkins in a row at the bottom of the window frame. Starting with the crisscross pumpkin on the left side. The pumpkin with the foliage will go to the right of that. Before I adhere that down, I'll add the smaller pumpkin with the horizontal stripes. Then I'll add the splatter pumpkin and the larger polka dot pumpkin on the very right side. The final pumpkin I'll adhere is the small pumpkin with the vertical stripes. So there is my finished card, and I did end up making 4. Since I had all of my stamps already set up in my mini MISTI, I just went ahead and stamped out lots and lots of decorative pumpkins. It's a very simple card design, but I really like how it turned out. The gold splatter on the background adds a beautiful detail. And I think this design would work well for a Thanksgiving card. I'll probably stamp Happy Thanksgiving on the inside. Now moving on to card design number 2. I'll be using the same decorative pumpkin stamp set. I'll also be using the Fall Basket die set and Smile Shadow sentiment. This card, I will be using some pattern paper, and both of the pieces are from some retired honeybee stamp collections. I have a soft teal tone-on-tone gingham paper for the background, adding a tone-on-tone leaf pattern at the bottom of the card. I'll layer the background panel on some dark teal cardstock, and you can see I did cut out the sentiment from that cardstock piece. For a little bit of separation between the 2 pattern papers, I'll add a stitch strip die cut using the same dark teal cardstock. I have some double-sided adhesive tape on the back side. I'll adhere it in place, flip over the panel, use my scissors to trim off the extra. Then I'll put ATG tape on the back and add my card front onto a card base, leaving 1/8 of an inch of the white card base showing. From the Fall Basket die set, I cut out all of the pieces to assemble the basket. There's the main front, the two side pieces, and the very background of the basket. I'll first assemble the front of the basket, and all of the pieces for the front have a fun stitch detail. I've already gone ahead and stamped out several different decorative pumpkins in all 3 sizes. Instead of just orange, I also stamped some yellow pumpkins. That would be fun to have a little variety. I'll first adhere the pumpkins on the back piece of the basket. I'll put 3 on the top that I want to be more visible. Then I'll fill up the basket by adding more pumpkins on the bottom. They won't be as visible since the front of the basket will be covering them up. I'm trying to alternate the different colors and sizes of the pumpkins as I adhere them down. Once I have my basket all filled, I'll put glue on the back of the front piece of the basket and adhere it in place. I'm leaving one of the pumpkins out of the basket. From the same fall basket die set, I also cut out 3 of the wheat stems, and I used some gold pearlescent cardstock for those. I'll add 2 of the wheat stems on the left side of the basket, and 1 will go in front on the right. I did trim off the very bottom stem on the 2 wheat pieces that go on the left side of the basket, and I'm just tucking them underneath. Then I'll put glue on the back and adhere the basket in the lower left-hand corner. Add just a tiny bit of glue behind the 1 wheat stalk. For the polka dot pumpkin, I do have foam dimension on the back. I'll remove the release paper. Before adhering it down, I'll add the 3rd wheat stalk on the very right side of the basket. Then I'll adhere the pumpkin in front. For a sentiment, I'm adding the word smile. I cut out the word from the same dark teal cardstock. You saw I cut it out of that background piece. For the outline, I used some vellum. I'll adhere the 2 pieces together, adding the dot to the eye last. And I will use an embellishment wand to pick up the dot for the eye since it's teeny tiny. Once that's adhered, I'll flip over the sentiment, put glue on the back, trying to stay just behind the cardstock area. That way the glue doesn't show through on the vellum. Then I'll adhere the sentiment in the upper left-hand corner. I will place an acrylic block on top of the sentiment for some added weight while the glue dries. For embellishments, I'm using Pretty Pink Posh's Mint Shimmer Sequins. The color matches beautifully with the pattern paper. I'll put 2 in the lower left-hand corner and 3 in the upper right-hand corner around the sentiment. The sequin mix includes 3 different sizes. I'm using all 3 sizes in the upper right-hand corner and the 2 smaller sizes in the lower left-hand corner. I'll add a small drop of Barely Art glue, use an embellishment wand to pick them up and press them in place. So there is my finished card, and I did make 2 using this design. I love how this card turned out. The colors look so pretty together. For card design number 3, using the Decorative Pumpkin stamp set again. For a sentiment, I'm using Grateful Script die. I'll also be using the Stitch Strips die set and one of the borders from the Scallop Borders set number 2. This card will also be featuring some pattern paper. It's from an old retired Doodlebug set. It's always nice to use up some of the old pattern paper I've had in my stash. I have some fun plaid paper for the background and also a teal tone-on-tone pattern with trucks in the background. I'm using the scallop border on the teal pattern paper. I love the fun scallop design, and it does have the stitching right above the scallop edge. I'll put adhesive on the back and adhere the 2 pattern paper pieces together. I didn't cut the 2 pieces exactly the same. You could see just a tiny sliver of the plaid paper showing on the left side, so I did go and trim that off. At the top of the card, I'm adding a stitch strip die cut. This is the widest size, and I cut it out from some teal cardstock. I have some double-sided adhesive tape on the back side. I'll adhere it about 1/4 of an inch down from the very top. Flip over this panel, use my scissors, and trim off the extra. Then I'll layer this piece on the same teal cardstock. I noticed the label on the back of the cardstock, and it's one that comes off very easily, so I did remove that first. Then I'll add my card front onto a card base, leaving 1/8 of an inch of the white card base showing. I've already stamped and cut out more decorative pumpkins along with the sentiment Grateful, and I used some white shimmer cardstock for the sentiment. I'll adhere the sentiment down first, put glue on the back and adhere it in the center of the card, trying to make sure to get it nice and straight. I decided to add some more of the yellow pumpkins along with the orange since the plaid paper does have some yellow and orange together. Once the sentiments adhere down, I'll add 2 pumpkins in the upper right hand corner. First the orange crisscross, then I'll add the large yellow pumpkin with the foliage. Before adhering the yellow pumpkin down, I will put a scrap piece of cardstock just on the lower portion since I'm adding it on top of all these other layers. It'll help keep it nice and level. After placing the yellow pumpkin down, I realized I do need to trim off just a tiny bit of that scrap cardstock in the area where it sits on top of the orange pumpkin. Then I'll add the other 3 pumpkins in the lower left-hand corner, starting with the medium-sized pumpkin, the yellow vertical stripe, and a solid orange pumpkin in front. With the busyness of the plaid at the bottom of the card, I thought it would work well to have a solid pumpkin in front. And behind the solid orange pumpkin, I'll also add that scrap cardstock piece. For embellishments, I'm using more of the mint shimmer sequins since the color matches perfectly with the pattern paper. I'll put 3 in the lower left-hand corner around the pumpkins and 2 in the upper right-hand corner just above the 2 pumpkins. Put that small drop of glue down first. Use an embellishment wand to pick up the sequins and press them in place. So there is my finished card, and this time I made a total of 3. The pattern paper is from one 12 by 12 sheet, so I figured I would finish it off, and I was able to get 3 cards from the one sheet. Now here's another look at the 9 cards I made using Pretty Pink Posh's Decorative Pumpkins Stamp and Coordinating Die Set, along with some other fun dies from Pretty Pink Posh. The Decorative Pumpkin set is one of my favorites from their August release. You can use it for Halloween cards, but I decided to focus more on fall cards. If you are interested in any of the products I used in this video, I do have links provided in the description box below. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope you have a wonderful day.